We are introducing Arewa Youth Mentorship Program. The AYMP is a collection of Northern Nigeria academics and professionals from different spheres of life who volunteer to offer free mentorship and equip Northern Nigeria youth at all levels with necessary knowledge on career opportunities, scholarship grants, personality building, innovation, among others.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Tariq Ahmed, and as always, it is my honor and privilege to welcome you to this very important session, which is organized by the Arewa Mentorship Program. So the title of our talk today, as you've seen in the advertorials, is Mastering the Art of Crafting Winning Academic Research Proposal, where we'll look at more or less a guide to securing international research grants. And we are honored to have in our midst today Dr. Or should I say Professor Aisha Ali Gombe. And Prof is very much enthusiastic about this session. In fact, in the US, it's now 8 o'clock in the morning. For a lot of us, it's already 2 in the afternoon. But given the importance and Prof's willingness to share her ideas, that made her opt in for this session. So thank you very much for honoring our invitation, Prof. We're really glad to have you today. So as a lot of you already know, usually our agenda starts with a brief introduction about AYMP for some of you that probably this is the first time that you're joining us, where usually we hear from Dr. Yakubu Udil, who's our coordinator. Today, we'll hear from Dr. Maji Haruna, who's also an active member of the organizing committee. As you already know, there are quite a number of people that have been working behind the scenes trying to support the Arewa Mentorship Program. So Dr. Maji is one of those very active people that have been contributing. And today we'll hear with regards to the Arewa Mentorship from Dr. Maji. And then after that, we'll hear from Professor Aisha Ali Gombe for about 30 to 40 minutes. I understand you have a presentation about 30 to 40 minutes, Prof. And then after that, we'll also hear from Professor Rabia Salihu Said, who's our mentor. And, she's been there. She's had all these amazing grants. So we'll hear from her for about 15 minutes, and then we'll have the Q&A session. So please, you could use the chat box in order to put in your questions, or you could use the raise hand option after these talks, and then you get a chance to ask your question. So I think without taking much of your time, I remember I posted on social media that really I felt like I was going to benefit more just by participating in this session, because I think it's one that is very, very important, especially for those that are in academia or those that are looking into go into academia, because obviously if you're looking at how you can progress in academia, definitely funding is something that you'll have to consider. Application for grants, for funding, for fellowship, and what have you. So without taking much of your time, I'll pass on the virtual mic to Dr. Maji, who will talk us on how we can get involved with the Arewa Mentorship Program. Maybe Dr. Maji, for some of you, probably this is the first time you're seeing him. So maybe I'll introduce Dr. Maji. He is a distinguished scientist specializing in nanotechnology and energy engineering. He's academically accomplished, really. He's earned his undergraduate in Bayero University, Kano, where he obtained his degree in chemistry. And then he had a master's and a PhD in chemical and petroleum engineering from the University of Leeds in the United Kingdom. He's a recipient of numerous scholarships and awards, such as the Petroleum Technology Development Fund OSS Scholarship. And his work in nanotechnology, nano engineering has been internationally recognized, including winning a Newton Fund grant for UK-China research collaboration. His PhD work led to the industrial funding worth over £150,000 for developing nano materials for oil and gas applications. Professionally, he has served in academia roles or academic roles such as a lecturer, research fellow, as well as in industry as a research and development scientist at Pyrogard United Limited. He also has consulting experience in India with over 20, and also has over 20 published research papers as well as book chapters. In terms of his hobbies, he enjoys horse riding and traveling, football. I think he's traveled over six continents so far. So, Dr. Maji, over to you, please.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Tariq, for giving me chance to talk today. Although the mentorship session is very important to all of us, and I would like to begin by expressing my gratitude to Almighty Allah for enabling this mentorship session to come to fruition. I also extend my heartfelt appreciation to our distinguished guest for graciously accepting our invitation. Despite her demanding schedules, I believe so, and the challenge posed by the time differences. She might be at night, while here in the UK and Nigeria, this is an afternoon time. So we deeply value your presence today, Professor Aisha Ali Gombe, and thank you so much for being with us today and for the mentorship that you are going to offer. I would also like to extend my special thanks to the organizers of this our event and also our discussant, who is Professor Rabia Said, who serves as our mentorship and also mentor and supervisor for the AYMP since the beginning of the program for the last 3 years. And her contribution really valuable to us, and we do thank Professor for her time today. And I hope everyone will stay and learn from also her knowledge and how she obtained the grant. Without much time, I'm going to talk about briefly, actually, to mention about AYMP. AYMP stands for Arewa Youth Mentorship Program, and it's an initiative conceived by concerned academics and entrepreneurs hailing from northern Nigeria and residing across various parts of the globe. The primary aim of the AYMP is to offer free mentorship and career guidance, academic mentorship, leadership training, and essential entrepreneurship skills, mostly to the northern Nigerian youth. I believe some other people from different parts of Nigeria are also benefiting from this, so which we are happy for that. We have been doing this program for the past 3 years, and this is our 32nd, I think, mentorship webinar session. We do have all this mentorship session in our YouTube channel. When you search on the YouTube Arewa Mentorship, you will be able to see all the mentorship session that we have been doing, and you can search and get an insight from what we have done before. And also we do share, as Dr. Tariq and Dr. Akub mentioned, we do share a lot of career guidance and scholarship opportunities on our Facebook, and of course our major channel at the moment is our Telegram channel. So we do share so much in there. So if you have a chance to join us, we will share the link to the Telegram page on the here actually, so that you can be able to join us and benefit from what we have been doing throughout the time. And I don't have to take much of the time, which I believe our guests are already here. And I will hand you back to Dr. Tariq Galadanchi to take us to the next part of the agenda. Thank you so much for coming and everyone here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Doctor. Yes, as you've mentioned, there are quite a number of interesting talks, which are highly recommended. So do have a look at those. Definitely you'll have one or two things that you could pick from those. So without taking any time, I think it's better to just, dive into our talk today. So before that, I'll introduce our special guest, Professor Aisha Ali Gombe. She is currently an associate professor at the Computer Science and Engineering Division in Louisiana State University, and she's earned her PhD in Engineering and Applied Science with a major in Computer Science and concentration in Information Assurance from the University of New Orleans. That was in 2017. and that was following a master's degree in computer science in 2012. She holds an MBA from Bayero University, Kano, and a BSc from the University of Abuja in Nigeria. She was the recipient of the Total Final ELF Undergraduate Merit Scholarship in 2002, and she's currently the director, as I've mentioned, currently the director of LSU Cybersecurity Clinic and the founder of the System Security Lab. And her appointment followed the United States National Security Agency grant of 1.5 million US dollars to Louisiana State University. The grant is geared towards the creation of a pilot cybersecurity clinic to protect small businesses that are target to cyber attacks. Prof holds a joint faculty position at LSU Center for Computation and Technology. Expertise and research interests are in cybersecurity and digital forensics, focusing on mobile and IoT platforms. Her research involves solving applied cybersecurity problems such as malware and threat detection, cybersecurity investigation, privacy, policy enforcement, access control, and intrusion detection. She has authored a number of publications as well as co-authored some of those and have been featured in top-rated cybersecurity journals as well as conferences. She's won the Best Paper Award at DRFWS, which is a top-tier digital forensic conference in the United States, in 2 consecutive years, that's 2021 and 2022, and also an outstanding poster award at CoderSpy 2016. And since beginning her 10-year track journey, she has mentored 6 doctorate students, 2 of whom have graduated and are now assistant professors. Thank you very much. As always, I have shortened your CV, so I do apologize for that. And I'll give you the floor now.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you. So I will share my screen. Just give me a second. All right, can you hear me very well?
Yes, we can.
And can you see my full screen?
Yes, we can see that.
All right. All right. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to come on your platform and talk to you. I think I've been following what Arewa Mentorship Forum has been doing, and you guys have been doing an amazing job. And keep on the good work. And anytime if you need my my service, do let me know, whether it's 1 a.m. in the morning or 8 a.m. in the morning. I will try as much as possible to provide that service. I think, again, you're doing an amazing job here for our youths. So today I'm given the task to talk about the art of academic grant writing. So I will leave it to the floor to kind of gauge whether what I'm going to tell you is going to make you a master in the art of writing academic proposals, or you're just going to get somewhere in the fundamentals. But as he mentioned in my background, I work as an associate professor of computer science at LSU, and currently the director of the cybersecurity clinic and the founder of the System Security Lab. And I'm going to come back to my lab and what I do in terms of research and then my trajectory over the years. I earned my PhD and master's from University of New Orleans from 2011 to 2017. And before then, I did my bachelor's degree at the University of Abuja in 2005 and an MBA at Bayero University, Kano. I belong to a couple of different societies, such as American Academy of Forensic Sciences, IEEE, as well as ACM. I'm also a United Warrior by Sans Networks. So that's a little bit about me. And so in today's talk, I kind of wanted to keep it short and brief, because I truly believe this is supposed to be more of an interactive session than me giving you a very mundane lecture like at 8 o'clock in the morning. So I'm hoping that by the end of this segment, I will tell you some of the fundamentals of grant writing, and we're going to discuss the different types of funding and the phases of grant writing. And hopefully by the end of the segment, we'll explore some criteria for successful grant application. Now, I mentioned that I was going to come back to my lab and just to kind of show you my trajectory over the years. So I currently, I'm the director or the founder of my lab, which is called the System Security Lab, since resuming LSU last year. Now, before then, I was a student. So I was a student in someone else's lab as a master's student, as a PhD student, and that lab was called Great New Orleans Center for Information Assurance, GNOSHIA. Now, when I started my tenure track journey in 2017 at Tulsa University, I started a lab called the Malware Forensics Technology Lab. And that's where I hired my students and started to, seek for grant and whatnot. Now, my research in general, I kind of fit myself into what I call the system security research. And my focus has been, for the most part, in mobile and IoT platform. Now, like every researcher, we always have some kind of theme that we follow. So my theme for research has been in kind of 5 major areas: malware threat assessment, looking at vulnerability level, application level vulnerability, developing tools for system defenses such as intrusion detection systems, access control, firewalls, etc., and developing techniques and algorithms for digital forensics as well as cybercrime investigation. And very recently, I've been delving into privacy analysis and enforcement on mobile devices, and also extended that into IoT platforms. And again, like most academics, we always kind of tend to use some certain methodologies that fit into our research perspective. And here, I've been mostly, for the most part, using 5 different methodologies for my research, starting with software instrumentation, reverse engineering, user memory forensics, and other binary analysis techniques such as tint analysis. And for very recent, I've been delving into how to apply machine learning in some of my work. Now, in academia, why do we do research? Generally, we do research so we can create new science and foster innovation. And of course, when we do that, our kind of overarching objective is to be able to disseminate that result, to be able to put out our publications so people can see what we have created. And in most cases, some of what we've created, whether they're instrument, whether they're tools, whether they're new directives, new ideas, these ideas or these directives, these tools are going to be used to impact society. They're going to be used to change the way we live and we do things. So obviously, publication is a huge part of what we do, because that's kind of our own channel to disseminate our results. So here, I have been very lucky to have gotten so many publications within the last, I will say, more in the last 6 years, but even before then as a PhD student. I've published and co-authored about 40 different papers, and some I'm the first author and some I'm supervising author, and especially now as a faculty. But why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because most as a faculty in the United States, and I think in other parts of the world, your main job is, of course, teaching, but you have additional responsibility, which is the research. And research by design does not come cheap, right? So you have to find ways to support your lab, to build your lab, to buy equipments, to support your students, and of course to support yourself in every way possible. And so in most of the research that I did in the last 6 years as a faculty, I had to apply for funding so I can support all of these different components that I've mentioned. And over the last 6 years, we've been very successful in writing so many grant applications, and we got about 9 different grants. And totally, this grant accumulated to about $2.5 million. This is what I have brought into my former university, as well as what I've brought in currently in my university. And now you look at this, this kind of resume and say, okay, wow, she has done so much, right? She has gotten like about 10 grants in 6 years. And, the amount of money kind of looks good, like, can be able to support so many people. And, you see that and see success. But generally, when we project successes, we often do not project failures, right? So I kind of wanted to put in this particular slide here to show you that whenever somebody says, I'm successful, or, this is what I was able to achieve, that person must have gone through a lot of failure as well. And I can tell you, when I look at my profile on National Science Foundation's website, I could see a lot of awards that were declined. In fact, the total number of awards that were declined were much more than the awards that were given to me. So when you just look at the slide, you can see that I think there's about maybe 7 different or 6 awards that have applied to National Science Foundation, totally more than $4 million. And I was only successful in one right here, which is about $174,000. So what am I saying here? To show you that I have gained some experience within the past 6 years, not just in successfully gaining grants, but in also understanding what makes a grant a very bad grant. How are you going to fail in a grant? Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I got all of the, the magic bullets, like tomorrow I'm going to write the best grant ever and secure $10 million. Absolutely not. I can still write, in fact, just this week, my team and I got a notification that a grant that we wrote to the same national foundation, which gave us $1.5 million, was declined, which is for about $3.2 million. To show you that, yes, you could still be successful, write a grant to an agency, be successful, and you can still fail, right? So, but over the years, I think each time I sit down and write grant, whether, I'm the main principal investigator or a co-PI, there's always something to learn. It gives me that opportunity to be in that illusional space and learn as much as possible, get to learn my domain, get to learn from the perspective of my my co-PIs, and also get to learn other soft skills, which I'm going to talk about later. But having said that, let's kind of dive in. What is a grant? So generally, when we say a grant, we mean a sum of money that is given by an entity, which could be a government or an organization for a particular purpose. Now, 2 things are involved here when you look at this definition. You see that there are 2 parties, and one party is given and another party is receiving, but the other party that is receiving has to provide something in return, right? So this defines something that is some form of a trust, if you will, where there is an agreement. One party has to provide some sum of money with a goal in mind, while the other party, which is the receiver, receive that sum of money with the intention of providing a particular task or perform a particular task or doing some kind of activity. Now, in general, we kind of classify grants or grant funding into 2 different categories. We have what is called the program or project support, and we have what is called the operational support. Now, as the name implies, with the project support, this is a type of grant that is geared toward a very, very specific, specialized purpose. So, for instance, you are an academic in Nigeria and you want to travel to Italy for some conference. You might apply for a travel fund through your association or through that fund or through some other organization to say, support me for this very specific purpose. I'm only going to use this money to pay for my ticket, pay for my accommodation, pay for my per diem, pay for everything related to this particular travel. Now, you could see that this is very specialized. Now, we could also apply for funding like scholarship. I want to go to school. I got an admission somewhere. I need to pay for my tuition and fees and insurance. And, this money I'm applying, it's only going to be geared towards paying for my scholarship. It could also be equipment funded. For some of us researchers that work in the science field, oftentimes we have to buy very big, large equipment. So I may be working in, I may be doing research and malware analysis that requires me to run a very large data set. I might read a high performing computer. So, I might apply for a grant to say, can you support me to buy this very big machine that costs maybe $4 million, etc. So this is very specialized. It's an application that is geared towards very specific purpose. Now, in operational grant, this is more generalized. It's kind of more broad. It encompasses literally almost everything. And depending on the purpose of the grant, the funders will usually tell you what are the items that could be funded. So for instance, an operational grant could be, the grant that we just secured for the clinic, which is we're creating a new unit within the university. within this new unit, we're going to be funding students. We're going to first be training students. We're also going to be funding students to come and help us do the work. Some of them will be developing websites, some will be developing some content, some will be performing research to evaluate the effectiveness of the program. And also, we might be buying some equipment so that our students can use maybe laptops when they engage with businesses. So you could see that there is so much that we could do with the money. It's not, there is a theme obviously with that grant, but what we could do with the money, we could channel it to different items within the grant. So having said that, now that we understand what's a grant and the different types of grant funding is available, who gives the grant and where does the grant comes from? So generally, you cannot say this is just a very specific place where you can get grant. No, grants can come from individual. I may be very rich and decide tomorrow I want to give scholarship to, people in my community, and I'm an individual, and that will be termed as a grant. Now, as an individual, I'll come up with my own criteria, with my own goals and objectives, and then put in an RFP and say, apply for this grant, and if you're eligible and your application looks good to us, based on certain criteria, we're going to be awarding you. Now, generally, when you look at individual grants, you see that they're very, very small and tailored towards very, very specialized purpose. For instance, most of it is going to be for scholarship, and in some cases you get things for travel funding. Now, you can also have foundations, and foundation could be family-based foundation, independent foundation, or community foundation. Now, again, these are kind of, they follow different tax codes. They are also kind of different in terms of who gives the money, but nonetheless, all of them are foundation. Now, the goal of this foundation is to say, we're going to be putting money, we're going to be setting aside money for a particular purpose. It could be as big as an operational grant, but it could also be for special purpose, like say, we're giving money for scholarship. Now, for family foundation, this is usually based on family estate. So I could come from a very wealthy family and say, okay, based on what we've been doing and the kind of business we're doing in this community, we want to put in money aside to do something for our community. It could also be independent group of people. That could be something like an association or a community. Now, corporate organizations can have their own foundation, and they can also channel grant money through their marketing department. So oftentimes, let's say Arewa Youth Forum might want to do something, an event, and then they might reach out to, let's say, Zenith Bank and say, Zenith Bank, can you support our work? In return, Zenith Bank will say, okay, we're going to give you some money to do this function. However, we want to brand the entire event with Zenith Bank logo, so everybody knows that Zenith Bank is funding that event. Nonetheless, that's a grant money they're giving you to perform your function. In return, they're using that function to kind of market their product. Now, when we talk about corporate foundation, it's slightly different. The organization will not use that money for marketing, but rather you look at it as a social responsibility. So let's assume a company like Ashaka Cement in Gombe, they might say, okay, we have a social responsibility towards our community. So what we're going to be doing is we'll set aside money so we can improve, let's say, mining education within our local community. Just excuse me, I need to turn off my column. So they will say, we're going to set aside money to help our community in mining education, for instance. Now, where big grants come in is from government and other big contractors. With government, grant could be for multiple different purposes. One, it could be to improve governance. It could be to improve policy. It could be to improve the population. It could be for economic value. It could be for military value. It could be for multiple different things, depending on the agencies. So most of the grants you see people applying, especially when they want to, create novel ideas, create new science, let's say, fostering new innovation in quantum computing, or, develop new artificial intelligence models. You see, this will often come from government agencies. Lastly, we have grants that come from humanities, art and science, a very specialized category where communities can come together and say, we want to innovate here. We want to improve this domain. We want to make sure that, maybe arts and culture in Nigeria never gets into extinction, so we want to improve that particular category. So having said this is how and where we get grants, people often ask me, where do I look for the grant? Now, I can tell you, I don't know much about looking for grant externally, because in most of what we do here, if you're faculty in the United States, we have, and I have kind of a slide here, so I'll come back to the other slide. We have a dedicated resource person within our university that curate all of the grants that they think our unit, or a unit could be a department or a college, and say, we think these are all the grants that you're eligible to apply, or some of you can be able to apply for this grant. So they send us this email like once a week. I think the one that comes from the VP's office comes once a month. So we're given this tailored list of grants to say, okay, these are all the grants available for you. Look it up and see what you're interested in and apply, and we're there to support you. Now, I kind of did a small digging to see what are some funding databases that are available. I find that Scientify is really good. I created a profile there, and I think like if you're looking for a really good database, I would suggest maybe, try Scientify. I found also the grant database under Ford Foundation is kind of really a good one. And if you're looking for government grant, for instance, in the US, you could explore the grants.gov, which is publicly available. You can access it from anywhere in the world. I found some very tailored Africa-specific grant in the Trust Africa database. So, you might want to explore that. So having said that, now the next thing is, let's talk about the writing process. We mentioned that somebody has money, somebody wants to receive money to do a particular function. Now, you as the receiver, you have to convince the giver to give you the money. And that process of convincing the giver is called the grant writing process. It's an entire process, because oftentimes we only think about the proposal itself, the narrative itself. But writing grant, it's much more than the proposal. It's much more than the narrative. It is all encompassing, everything before you begin to write up until the time you submit and your proposal is in review. This is all part of the grant writing process. Now, the goal of this process is to try to convince the funding body to give you that money for that particular purpose. Now, it is very, very important that you craft, first you understand your potential funding source. You do your due diligence in researching, then I'm going to talk about the phases. You also have to write something that is compelling, something that is very convincing, something that you're going, the person reading your narrative knows that, okay, you know what you're doing and what you say you want to achieve is doable, right? And then finally, you have to submit it for review. So generally, we kind of put this process into 4 different phases. There's the research phase, the planning phase, the writing, and the submission phase. Now, as the name implies, the research phase is the beginning phase. This is where you get to understand the funding source. And then in the planning phase, this is where you got to coordinate your thought. You're going to put in all of your different pieces together to say, okay, this is how, in a bigger picture, how I want to achieve this. And finally, you put it down in writing in a very good narrative that flows, and then submit your proposal. So let's go into the research phase. In the research phase, as I mentioned, this is where you write your proposal. And here, this is where you know your funding body. This is where you research to understand, first, who is your funder? What's their expectation? What's their guidelines? What's their requirement, right? So I kind of break this into 3 major sub themes, if you will. There is understanding your funder. Who are they? As an entity, you want to know who they are, because trust is involved. You're asking somebody to give you money. You want to know who that person is. Of course, I'm just going to give a humor here. You don't want to ask a thief to give you money. You want to make sure that, you're getting the money from legitimate source. You also want to know if you're eligible, and you want to know what they want. So starting with who they are, I like to go back to the first point that I mentioned, the type of funder. Is it an individual? Is it a corporation? Is it a community? Is it a government? Because depending on who the funder is, that often determines the size of fund. Is it a small individual is going to give you 1,000 naira? Or is it a corporate entity is going to give you 50,000 naira? Or is it a government entity that will give you 20 million naira, right? Those are different, understanding that is going to help you determine what kind of idea you want to present, and whether, the idea, it should be big enough or it should be a small idea. Now, also, when you talk about the who the funder is, you want to really be able to say, I know this entity and I can trust them. Oftentimes we only look at trust from the receiver and say, okay, can the giver trust the receiver? It's also a two-way street. We want the receiver to trust the giver. It's important that you are sure the giver is an entity that you can trust, is an entity with a mission that aligns with your own goals, with your own organization mission, and also with your own principle. So for instance, if you on principle, you don't want to do something, or on principle, you want to do something, let's say on climate change, and then you have a funding body that does not believe in climate change, maybe your visions, your objectives and their mission do not align, and maybe you should not go for that particular funding source. Are they credible? Because money is going to exchange hand. Are you collecting money from people that are not credible, or from an entity that is not credible? This is very important. Are they organizations that do not file their taxes? You want to make sure that you can trust them and they're credible. And finally, are they an entity or partners that are locally, regional, or international? This is key because a lot of times you have to go back and forth, maybe at the beginning in this research phase to kind of, ask questions, or during the submission phase to ask questions as well, or even afterwards when the award is done, you might have some questions, or you have to submit reviews, maybe 6 months or annually. It's important that you know where to contact the funding body. So you need to understand whether it's a funding body that you can knock on their doors, they're right around the corner, or it's a funding body that is regional. They don't have an office in Nigeria, but maybe they have an office somewhere in West Africa, or it's an international organization that only have an office, let's say in New York City. So that is the first stage in your research. Get to understand your funding body. Now, the next perspective, and I can actually show you this. I think I have a small example here. Yesterday, I was kind of putting this slide and I come across a grant that was sent from one of the emails from my college, and this is a grant from the Fish and Wildlife Services, and so you could see that the agency is called the FWS in the United States, and the mission of this organization is to support protecting and managing the U.S. natural resources by collaborating with partners and stakeholders to conserve land, water, and extend outdoor and recreational activities. So if I, coming from computing perspective, I look at the mission, maybe that does not align with my career goals. I cannot be able to submit anything here. So I'll just look at, okay, the award ceiling, the floor, the organization, the mission of this organization. I will immediately just go to the next grant because I don't see myself fitting into this particular grant. All right. So in researching, get to know your funders. Now, the second part of researching is get to know whether you're eligible or not. Because immediately when you look at the eligibility and you're not, you want to move to the next grant. You don't want to waste your time. The first thing your reviewers will review in content reviewing is to see your eligibility. Can you apply for this grant? Are you eligible for this grant? If you're not eligible, they will not even read your proposal. So check to see whether you're eligible. Oftentimes, funding agencies, they'll put out an RFP, and in that RFP, they'll specify in a subsection whether you're eligible or not. Now, eligibility could be, I kind of put it in 4 different subunits. It could be in expertise. Do you have the right knowledge and skill to conduct that particular research, to do that particular task? Now, think about it. If I, as a computer scientist, apply for, a research in fish and wildlife services, I'm lying to myself because I don't have that expertise to do that particular function or to carry out any of that task. And if I do that, immediately they see my resume, they know I'm lying and I'm not going to be eligible for that particular funding because it is outside my scope of expertise. Now, later I'll talk about team building because sometimes on your own, you may not possess the expertise to carry out that particular task, but maybe collectively as a team, you may have that, expertise to conduct that activity or to carry out that task. So it's important when you review the expertise, think about it in terms of your entire team or collectively as a team, not as an individual. Now, organization. Oftentimes, funding agencies are not going to give you money as an individual. They will give you money through your organization. Now, your organization could be a company if they're funding for-profit organization. It could be your workplace, which let's say academics in Nigeria, it could be your university, or I from here, it could be my university as well. Now, is your organization eligible? Now, this is very important because oftentimes we see this where funding agencies says we're only funding businesses, for-profit businesses. Universities are not eligible to apply for funding that is meant for for-profit businesses. Now, if they say we're funding non-profits as an organization, then if you run an NGO or you run or you're part of a university, then your organization is eligible. So it's important that you review that criteria and see that your organization is eligible. Next is the region and country. Is this support meant for a particular region? Is it meant for people of a particular or residents of a particular country? It's important that you identify that at the beginning so that if you're eligible, you apply, and if you're not, then you move to the next round. And finally, there are other criteria or other factors such as gender. I've seen very recently a particular fellowship program that is only geared towards women scientists. So first you have to be a scientist, and they define who is a scientist in this perspective. It could be, I think, in core physical or behavioral science, and you have to be a woman. If you cannot identify as a woman, then you're not eligible for that funding. So I have another example for you. Yesterday I was again looking at some of the funding available. There's this Andrew Carnegie, which is a corporation in the United States that now this is their second year of giving a fellowship. So this is a fellowship application. And this is only available, open to citizens of the United States or permanent residents. So if you're not permanently residing in the US and you don't have a green card or you're not a citizen, you're not eligible for this funding. And it's also only available for people with a PhD or terminal degree. So again, you could see the eligibility criteria. So even if you're a US citizen or you're residing here but only holds a master's, you may not be eligible, except if you hold a high-level professional position outside the academia. Now, you could have a master's and you could be a CEO of, let's say, Facebook. Maybe you're eligible to apply because you hold a very high-level professional role somewhere outside the academia. So again, review the eligibility criteria. It's going to tell you whether you should apply for that grant or you should not apply for that grant. Now, in the last part of the researching is getting to know what the funders want. Now, oftentimes in RFP, it's very detailed. And I find people, and I'm culprit here, we don't read RFPs as we should, because RFPs are designed to be very detailed. From the funder's perspective, they want to put in as much information as possible so people know exactly what they're applying to or for, and then see if the goals of this project aligns with their goals so that they can apply. Now, what you want to look at very detailed is the goals. What do they seek to achieve? They're giving you money. They will not just give you money for you to be rich. They don't want to make you the next Dangote in town. No, they're giving you money so you could perform some tasks, so you could do something, mostly for your community or for bettering the world. Now, you need to evaluate that. Can you kind of like phrase this goal at least in 1 or 2 sentences? Does it make sense to you? Does it fit into what you want to do? Does it fit into your mission? If it is not, you want to move to the next grant, because if the goal is completely something from what you want to do or what you have been doing, then it's no point applying for that grant. Now, what's the potential outcome? Oftentimes grant will tell you this, or maybe sometimes impliedly. What are they expecting at the end of this? Are they expecting a standard program? Are they expecting an instrument? Is it a software? Is it a hardware? Is it some kind of training? What are they expecting at the end of this program or at the end of this grant? Is it a 1-year, 2-year grant? What are they expecting at the end of that particular grant? This is key because you have to take this potential outcome into account as you write your proposal. Without that, your proposal is going to have a beginning without an ending. And meaning if you don't know what the outcome will be, you just leave it open. Okay, we're going to train people. Okay, train people. What happened when you train the people? It's important that you identify what should be the potential outcome. And then submission criteria. You might write the most amazing proposal, but if you did not submit it in the right criteria, then you're not putting yourself up for success. Let's assume your funding agency says, you submit a proposal that is a maximum of 15 page, and now you did an oversight a little bit and submitted 20 page. they're going to reject your proposal. So it's important to understand what's the submission criteria. What are the additional documents that you have to include? Do you need your CV? Do you need a letter of support from your company or from your organization? Do you need your vice chancellor to endorse this proposal? What are the submission criteria? What portal do you need to submit? Is it electronic submission? Is it, a physical submission? You need to identify the submission criteria. And finally, while you have nothing to do with this, the review criteria is it's very essential. How are they going to review your proposal? Is it going to be one person that reviews? Is it going to be just content review? Is it going to be technical review, or is it going to be both? And is it going to be peer review? Is it going to be scientists like you that will be reviewing the proposal? Or is it just going to be, somebody in their nook in the office that will be reviewing your proposal? It's important to understand what are the criteria. And sometimes I've seen some RFPs that have points for the different review criteria. Okay, so if you have all of your documents, you get 10 points. If you have, your narrative, fit incorrectly, you have another 20 points. If you have, your CV, you have another 5 points. So they give you all of this criteria, all of the review criteria in the RFP. Now I have another example here. This is a solicitation for advancing informal STEM learning, and this is solicitation from National Science Foundation. Immediately when I look at this heading, I'm like, okay, you can only apply if you are a STEM major or if you're in STEM, and you have to be someone that is doing research in STEM education, because obviously you try to develop some ways for advancing informal STEM learning. Now, when I look at the goal, I could see that the funding agencies, they have 6 goals, but they say the 3 goals have to be explicitly addressed within the proposal. And the first goal is you have to come up with how procedures for learning in informal experience and environment. And secondly, you have to find ways to advance the knowledge base of informal STEM learning. And finally, you have to put in something for equity, belonging, and broadening participation. So these are the 3 major goals, and they say you could put in 3 additional goals. But if your idea cannot fit into these goals, then you're wasting your time, and your idea has to fit into these goals. Now, I also look at let's see, what is the available money that they'll be providing for the funding. They have money from, they say the range is from $28 million to $41 million. But you could submit proposal in 5 different categories. The first category, which is a synthetic project, is kind of the smaller one. The maximum is $500,000. Then they have the conference project, which goes to that's the smallest one, from 75 to 250. Then there's a partnership, which goes to from 50,000 to 150. And then there is the integrated research, which goes from 250 to $2 million. And then finally, the big one is the research in support of wide-reaching public engagement in STEM project, which goes from $1 million to $3.5 million. So you could see they are giving you all of this information. And there's eligibility information somewhere, which I did not copy, but here they're telling you what's their goal and the different types of proposal that you could write. So you have to select one of the 5 different proposals and then tailor your idea to one of those. And then this is a very good RFP, because they even give you a roadmap that when you write your proposal, this is what we're expecting. We want you to have some crafted intent, which shows, how you can take existing knowledge on STEM learning and then integrate it and come up with funding on how advanced informal STEM learning looks like. And then you have to buttress that with literature and, meta-synthesis and meta-analysis, and then finally come up with your deliverables. And your deliverables has to be like evidence based, and, they have to have some deep understanding of informal STEM learning and use insight and question into STEM learning. And this is only for the first project, which is the synthetic project. So they're very, very articulate here. They tell you exactly what they're expecting. And here, this tells you how you will submit your proposal. NSF used to have a portal called the Fastlane. In this particular RFP, they say, do not submit using Fastlane because we're moving to grants.gov website. So submit everything through grants.gov. If tomorrow I decide, okay, I only have Fastlane account, I will submit through Fastlane, you'll see that my proposal will not be reviewed because they will not even receive it because they don't use Fastlane anymore. And then finally, they have a very rich document about their review process. NSF follows what they call the merit review process, which is a peer review process. People from your field would be selected. And that sometimes they may know you, but they have to sign a conflict of interest form and whatnot. And then they have to review the proposal and then come and discuss the proposal. So it's kind of a very detailed review process. So this is an example of getting to know what your funders want. And that's the last phase of the researching. Now, I think I'm taking more time than I'm expected to take, but the second phase of your grant writing is the planning phase. I see that a lot of people are raising their hands. I don't know for the moderators if we're going to wait on that until we're done with the presentation and then we answer questions. Correct?
Yes, I think that would be better.
Okay, great. All right. So then the second phase is the planning phase, right? Now that I know what the funders are expecting, this is now the time for me to articulate my idea, to conceptualize my idea, to put in all of my thought process in one place, to say, okay, they are looking for solutions to solve hunger problems in Nigeria, or maybe, specifically in a small region. I will come up with idea on this is how I think we can solve a hunger problem, let's say in Gombe, right? This is me coming up with idea and trying to craft everything within that idea. Now, this is also the time when you want to develop a team. I mentioned that when you talk about expertise, sometimes don't limit yourself to only what you can do. Proposals, oftentimes I find it, especially when they're big proposals, they want you to come up with good team. They don't want you to say, I can do it all. People don't like that thing. I mean, agencies don't like that kind of mentality. It's important to work as a team. When I was writing my clinic proposal, I had this big idea in my mind that I think, LSU as a flagship state university, has this amazing group of students coming into a cybersecurity track. And, we could do A, B, and C to the students and improve their learning as well as engaging with small business. I had all of this idea in my head, but I knew if I go to NSA and say, give me $1.5 million, I'm going to create this amazing program, they will think I'm lying. So what did I do? I was like, I'm going to need a team. I started talking to people. I come up with a team of 9 people, each one having a particular role in that project. And collectively, we're a very strong team that we could do that job. And when we submitted to NSA, there were so many other competitive proposals, but they select ours, I think, mostly because of our idea, but also because of our team. So team is very important. As you conceptualize your idea, think about whether you can do it by yourself or this is important that you do it as a group. Now, review your organizational capacity. I cannot overemphasize this, because if your organization, you have, let's assume again, going back to my clinic proposal, it's a very big idea. It runs 2 years. We need a lot of students. We need a lot of moving pieces. And let's assume I work for a very tiny, small university that does not have that capacity. Then my reviewers will say, thank you, this is a very good idea, but you don't have the capacity to carry on this task. So it's important that you review that your organization has the capacity to conduct that activity. And then the feasibility of the proposal writing. Now, you see, oftentimes we just jump in the last minute. And I can tell you, whenever I review proposals, I know proposals that are written like in the last 2 weeks, because you could see that, the author did not have much time to articulate the idea. You could see this so much that the author could do. The proposal might even be messy because the author did not really took the time to write. Now, they say good proposals takes about 6 months to 9 months to write. Have I written proposal is less than that? Yes, I did. But my first proposal took more time. Of course, my second proposal took less time. And then, gradually as you master how you craft your proposal, it becomes easier for you. You can write it in a shorter amount of time. But you have to be realistic because you may have other engagements. And if you have other engagements, I have other proposals that I have in mind since last year that I resumed, and I did not get the chance to, sit down and write those proposals down. So obviously, review if you have the realistic timeline to complete the proposal. And some of these proposals will require that you seek input from outside sources. It could be outside partners, other agencies. It could also be other industry partners. You have to send letters to them. You have to give them time to review, and then maybe send a draft, they review, and then send back a letter of collaborations to you. So it's important that you give time before you write, when you're writing your proposal. And then budget. Oh my God. This is one of the most important component of your proposal. Now, in the planning phase, this is where you have to identify what goes into your budget. Who will get what? Where you're going to be channeling the money, how much money is available, and how much money you're requesting, and how you're going to be spending that money. Budget is key. Remember, somebody is giving you money, and that person or that entity is not giving you money to make you rich. That your entity is giving you money for you to carry out a task. So it's important that you plan your budget accordingly. And then finally, potential for success. Review yourself, review what idea that you have. Think about whether this has a potential for success. Have you ever written a proposal like this? Have you ever written a proposal in this area? Have you ever written a proposal to a certain amount of money? If you think, for instance, I knew if I just apply the clinic by myself, $1.5 million, NSA is not going to give me that money. Nobody's going to give me that money just alone to say, to write that proposal or for that grant, because I don't have potential for success alone on that particular money. And in fact, there was another proposal that I wrote last 2 years, and I had this great idea, but I looked at myself. I've now worked a lot at that time, actually 2 years ago. At that time, I didn't have a lot of publications in IoT. And I've just started venturing into IoT. Just one of my students did a couple of things in IoT, but we've not done a lot in IoT. And I was interested in this, and I was interested in this money. It's about $500,000. I look at it, I know my idea was good, but I didn't have the potential for success. So I reached out to a colleague, a senior colleague, and say, do you want to join me in this proposal? I think you're going to bring something to the table. You're going to bring your expertise. You've worked in IoT, you've worked in PLCs. And I think when we put our heads together, we can come up with a very good proposal. And we did submit the proposal and we got the grant. So it's important that you really evaluate yourself. Do you have the potential for success? If you don't, maybe, even if your idea is good, you have to think twice, or maybe that's the time that you need to bring your team into it. Now, the second to last phase of the grant writing is the writing itself, right? This is where now all of your researching, all of your planning will come to, you will now articulate it and write it into a very, very compelling, convincing narrative. This is where you're going to articulate your idea. This is why you're going to say, I am writing this for this purpose, with this motivation, and I want to achieve this objective. And finally, at the end of this is the impact of my project. This is why you have to demonstrate how your mission, your goals aligns with the funding mission. And whenever you write, I find it very important that you use some of the language from the RFP. If let's say, again, I would be going, the clinic proposal was the most recent successful proposal that I have. So I kind of have things in my mind about it. When I was writing that proposal, the RFP mentioned something about, engaging small businesses, and they mentioned things about using that as an avenue for experiential learning for students. I use those phrases a lot. Of course, you have to use synonyms, but that phrase and the synonyms of that phrase, I use that a lot throughout my proposal, because I want to connect what I am doing, my goal and my objective, to the funder's mission for that particular funding. And you want to also buttress that information with a lot of data, statistics, as well as some literature, because again, this is going to be a competition. There are going to be some other people that will be, submitting. You want to make sure that you put your proposal ahead of all other proposals. Now, in your writing, oftentimes the funding agency may tell you what they're expecting in some sort of a soft outline. If they do have that, I recommend you use their outline. If they don't, you can take, or maybe you could ask others, and there are free available sample proposals out there. You could use some sample successful proposals out there to see how they structure it. But I often find that your topic is key. Is your topic straightforward enough? Is it catchy? Does it, encompass the mission, the goals, all in a couple of words? This is key, because if your topic is way out of line, then oftentimes, like, that's a recipe for disaster. It's not a done deal for you for topics, but I think, like, it's not going to help your proposal if your topic is not on point. Your research question. What are you asking? If it is applied research, if it is research that, let's say program or training, are you aligning with what the funding agency is looking for? Do you have the right motivation? Right? Let's say, you're solving hunger problem. Okay, everybody knows that there's a hunger problem. Is there any very specific motivation to that community that you're solving the hunger problem? Try to, tailor and fine-tune your motivation to very specific purpose in this case. Now, what are your goals? What do you seek to achieve? Be able to articulate that in a couple of sentences. Say, I'm writing this to solve hunger problems in Gombe. Very specific, and give your motivation for that. Now, then you have to provide a detailed description or the narrative. Now, this is where we classify that in NSF language. They call it intellectual merit. This is where they want to see that you exactly know what you're doing. You have your data, you have your statistics, you have your literature. You also have a process, a procedure, an instrument on how to achieve your goal. If I say I want to build the next AI model, to let's say for facial recognition. Okay, how am I going to do that? I have to show them I understand AI. I have to show them I understand the current literature in AI, in using AI for facial recognition, and what is my own new model, and how is my model different from the existing one, and can somebody reading my description understand my model and be able to think that my model is real, my model is intellectually accurate, my model fit into that particular science. So it's kind of important that your narrative is filled with facts and it's filled with that science, so that the people reviewing, often which might be your peers, understand exactly how you're going to achieve it. Remember, proposals are often projections, right? You may not have done the work, but as you project, you don't want to project lies. You don't want to project things that are not feasible. You want to project things that are very feasible. So it's important that your narrative and your description detail that information. Then what is your outcome? Of course, for instance, the outcome of your funding agency, what they're expecting, maybe that they want a deliverable. You want to specify exactly your own deliverable. Okay, at the end of this project, I will be presenting a software. I want to make my software open source, right? So you want to make sure that that is very clear. What's your project timeline? Nobody's going to give you money without knowing when you're spending what amount of money. They want to know what's happening on the first month, on the second month, and on the last month. And what is the role of everyone on that project? You cannot bring 10 or 9 people, 2, 3 people, and just say, okay, they're all part of the project. What are they going to be doing? How are they, how is their role on your role different? Are you all of the PIs having the same role, or every PI has a particular role to do in that project? Now, the evaluation plan. This is for us academics. We understand that whenever we develop new ways, new method, new science, we have to evaluate. We have to have metrics for success. You have to show, okay, at the end of this is what is a successful proposal look like. This is what my program will achieve at the end of the day. What's the impact into society? How do we measure it? You have to put in scientific instrument for that. Now, recently I've seen so many proposals that have a section for sustainability. If I give you money to say you're solving hunger problems in Gombe, okay, you solve hunger problems for the next 2 years with my money. What are you going to do after my money has exhausted? Do you have any provision for sustainability? And finally, additional document. If they require that you submit your CV, they require that you submit your taxes for your organization, they require that you submit additional information from, let's say, industry partners and government agencies, you have to make sure that all of these additional and supporting documents are submitted. And finally, when your document is ready, when you look at your narrative, it is an entire journey. It's a journey that helps you understand the domain very well. Even if it's your domain, you get to even understand your domain more. It's a journey that helps you learn how to write, actually. It helps you with that soft skill on writing, how to write, how to articulate your point, how to organize yourself, how to learn what other people have been doing if you have more than one person on the team. So it's an entire journey. Now you're ready to submit your proposal. Your proposal is ready. You have to make sure the submission follows the guidelines as stated in the RFP or as stated in their website. Make sure that if you're submitting on using a particular link, you submit to that link. If it is a physical submission, make sure it's submitted. If it has to be dated, has to be postmarked, you have to make sure all of that are put in place. And then finally, it's important that you make sure that you've contacted your source, your funding agency, to know if you submit, are you going to get an acknowledgement? Mostly when you submit through emails and website, they send an acknowledgement almost immediately or the next day. So you know that your proposal has been received. If you are submitting physical copies, sometimes they give you a receipt of a stamp that the proposal has been received. So that's the submission phase. Now, finally, what makes a successful proposal? I've been on a review for a couple of proposals, and I can tell you from my experience, I think 3 things makes or break your proposal. First is the logic model. What's a logic model? The logic model tells your funder, this is how you want to achieve your goal, and this is your potential outcome. If you cannot articulate 1, 2, 3 from point A to point B, this is how I want to create a new algorithm for detecting cybercrime on mobile devices. If you cannot start from point A to point Z, and somebody taking your proposal with no experience in cybercrime investigation, but understanding your logic, then your proposal is not up for success. It is very important that you articulate your logic model. This is the core of your proposal. It goes into your narrative very well. And if you don't have that, or it's kind of shaky, or you don't have all the facts that you need, then your proposal will have a lot of questions, and your reviewers will tell you, while we think you might have a good idea, there's a question mark on your logic model, and we think point A and point B is not aligned, or you cannot reach point Z from this point A because of so thing. Remember, most of your reviewers are going to be people in your field, and they understand the field, they understand the context. So if you try to jump things, they'll kind of immediately figure that out. Track record of success. I've seen so many times where somebody will write a nice proposal, except if it is a really, really, junior level proposals. But if you apply for proposals that's expected for senior people and you don't have any track record, I've never written anything. I give you an example. I've never written anything in IoT in terms of proposal. I've written a couple of papers, very few papers. I knew I don't have the track record for success. And even though my idea is good, remember, the person giving you the money or the entity has to take some risk. And when they look at your record, they will say, we cannot take this risk. This idea is good, but it's too risky for us to take this to fund you. So thank you, it's good, but we cannot fund you. Now, finally, is the budget. Your budget is key. If your budget shows that you're going to be living in Panama by next month, definitely nobody's going to pay you. Again, that's a humor, but nobody's going to give you that money. Remember, nobody's giving you money for you to be rich. If you want to be rich, if you want to make money, you don't make money through grants in general like this. You make money through businesses. So go and do your business. Sometimes there are grants that are tailored towards businesses, right? They are for profit, and they're going to be very clear about that. We're giving you money so you can set up a business or you can improve your business. That's for you to make money. But even with that, they don't want you to show that in your budget that you'll be traveling, you'll be traveling to Bahamas next month, right? So they want to see that you have the money, let's say, to buy equipment so you can, maybe start a greenhouse farm or something like that, right? So if that's your business model. So these are the 3 things that I find to help make it a successful proposal. Create a good logic model, your track record for success, and obviously your budget. Now, remember that your funders are not funding problems. Your funders are funding solutions. This is exceptionally very, very important. Sometimes we're very good in saying, this is the problem. This is where the issues are. Yes, we know that those are the issues. Yes, you're correct. but what's the solution? And your solution goes into your logic model. If you cannot articulate good solution to the problem, then you're not up for success. So just always remember, your funders will fund solution, not problem. Your funders have to trust you, have to believe that you can succeed, have to believe that you have a good track record. You have to trust them as well. You have to know them. You have to know that they have credibility and they have trust. So it's a two-way street. But, as you are submitting, now you're the one asking, it's important that when they read you trust them by reading their RFP, by going to their website and making sure that these are the right people that want to do business or want to partner with them. You will now be up for trust in their own side when you submit the proposal. They have to make sure that they can trust you based on your paperwork, based on your antecedents, based on your organization. Now, this is a summary. I talked about grant, the types of grant, the 3 phases of grant writing, and what makes a successful proposal. With that, I think I come to the end of my presentation, and I'm up for questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Wow, what a wonderful presentation. We really appreciate it. It's once again sparing time to, give us this very interesting, very mind-catching talk. So, and also you did mention when you started that you're very much happy to continue to support the Arewa Youth Mentorship Program. So, really appreciate that as well. Usually we have our Q&As after the whole session. So we've got our mentor professor who's going to be our discussant today. She definitely have a thing or two to say as well. And usually after these talks, I like to kind of give a kind of a summary, but I already seen a number of people are trying to raise their hands, trying to ask questions. So I wouldn't take that much time. Probably just a few things that I've really noted from your talk. You talked about impact. I think that's very important because quite a lot of people take that for granted. You're going to do all this wonderful work. You're going to publish your papers, but how impactful is that work that you've done? So as you've mentioned, you really need to identify ways of how you're going to evaluate whatever it is that problem that you're trying to solve. Definitely, you talked about identifying what is the potential outcome for the funders. That's something that really one has to identify and also incorporate into their proposal. Now, of course, the review criteria, you need to know, as you've mentioned, is it just going to be reviewed by one person? I had some time ago in one of the trainings that I've been that if you want to write an amazing proposal, it should be understandable by a 15-year-old. So it shouldn't be too technical because, again, it all depends on who's going to be on the panel. If it's going to be all experts, then obviously you can, make it a bit more technical. But at the end of the day, it should be, as you've mentioned, it should be logically aligned. It should be presented in such a way that everyone can really understand exactly what it is that that you're trying to solve, or what problem it is that you're trying to solve. And of course, sustainability, of course. I was in another session just a few days ago, and we had all this wonderful presentation, but then the question is what happened after that project? It was an EU Horizon project. They did all this amazing work in terms of, minimizing energy consumption. But then once the funding has finished, that's it. Then, things go back to the way it is. And quite a number of funders, as you've mentioned, would really want to know that after, the period of your proposal or the period of your project, that it's sustainable, that you're going to, continue making impact even after that. Now, of course, the budget. So for some universities, I know they do have a department that supports with budget. All you have to do is tell them this is exactly what you need. These are the people that that are going to be on the project, and based on their salaries and things like that, they're able to work out the budget, which helps. But then again, that takes quite a lot of time. And also, what you've mentioned, which is also very, very, in fact, everything that you've mentioned is very important. I'm just trying to pick out a thing or two. You've talked about the team. I think the team is also key. It's very important. You have to identify, people that are going to, contribute, really actively contribute to the project, and people who have, made impact in this area that whatever proposal it is that you're going to write. So without taking much time, I think I'll just give Prof the time to say a thing or two as well. A short introduction for Professor. Quite a number of you have already know Professor. She's always been with us right from the start of AYNP. She's a full professor of atmospheric physics at Bayero University, Kano, with extensive experience in academia and community service. She holds multiple degrees, of course, bachelor's, master's, and PhDs. Her master's was from the University of Reading and PhD from Bayero University, Kano. She has supervised numerous undergraduates as well as postgraduate research projects, and she has also won several accolades, including the Elsevier Foundation Award for Early Career Women Scientists in the Developing World. That was in 2015, and she was named one of BBC's 100 Inspirational Women of 2015. She has also been a visiting research scientist at the Institute of Applied Physics in Switzerland and was a visiting fellow at the James Martin Center for Non-Proliferation Studies in 2020. She's actively passionate about STEM and has really she still does promote the education and well-being of girls and women. At the same time, also mentoring boys and men. She is an advocate for environmental security and nuclear proliferation. Additionally, she is a trained facilitator for the British Council's Active Citizen Program and has trained over 300 students and community members in the program from 2015 to 2018. So thank you, Prof. I'll give you the floor now for your inputs. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tariq. I want to apologize, as is always with the country. I lost power on my MacBook, so I had to shut that down, and I'm using my phone. So that's why you may not see me very clearly. I want to first of all thank Professor Aisha for the presentation. That was brilliant. I've listened to many grant writing, proposals, presentation. But nevertheless, every time one learns a lot. And I've learned a lot from what she has given. And so I would actually, instead of actually discussing what she has said, she has said so much, and it's quite clear and straight to the point. I will only talk about some takeaways from what she has presented. And the first one, which is key, is that the success. When you talk about succeeding in getting grants, people need to understand that the road to that success is an iceberg. Below, you only see the tip, and that's the success that you see. But below that is all the struggles, all the failures, and so on. So one needs to be able to take that on board. For anyone wanting to write a grant proposal, and then when they get the first rejection, they should know that that's part of the road that they will that will lead them to success. And then again, she spoke about there's this operational support grant, which many people do not really take advantage of. It's sometimes in some places it's called the seed grant. It's something that you can use for the takeoff of either a research group or and for an organization and so on. That is something that also needs. And then this corporate marketing, the corporate marketing where in departments that can support some of your ideas. That's also particularly, I think, in Nigeria, it's one of the things that people do not take a lot of advantage of. And then again, there are grants which you can also get in equipment. So grant doesn't always have to be in cash. It can also be in kind. And so I will talk about that one. I wrote a proposal for the International Committee on Optics and Photonics, because we wanted to be able to train some young people to appreciate optics and photonics. So I wrote the proposal asking, instead, because they had already informed me that they do not have money. They are not given money, but they can give equipment or they can give what resources that will help you in what you want to do. And one of the resources that they have is something called the optics suitcase. So I was very ambitious actually in my proposal. I wrote that I wanted 20 of the optics suitcase so that I could select about 4 schools in Kano and another, and then Bayero University, the undergraduate program in electronics also could have 4 of those, so I bet 20. It wasn't such a big success, but it's still a success because instead of the 20, we got 4. So we got 4 and we'll be able to use that. So that's another way of getting, you can get grants in some of the resources that you need instead of money. And then I'm very happy that presenter, our doctor, mentioned that grant does not make you rich. Actually, when she said that, I smiled, because this is something that we need to amplify and keep on saying, because it looks like our community do not understand that. Every time I post that I have received a grant to do X, Y, and Z, then I get in my mailbox people sending, they want me to help them, and they put in their bank accounts. they put in their bank account number. So it's like, okay, you got a grant to do X, Y, Z, then it looks like that grant is now for distribution. So the grant doesn't make you rich. It is for you to carry out a certain activities, and the budget is already there, which you will need to. That is something that every participant here, please, should take that home and also spread it. That grants are not actually for making you rich, and it's not for distribution to to different people within the community. And then again, she spoke about grants, which are I don't know if they can hear me. It looks like
we can.
It looks like I've frozen up. Oh, you can hear.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. For scholarships, grant for scholarships. For those type, when you write, they already have their template. So mostly you would be completing the template for the scholarship and putting in all that they require, all that they ask for. That's a different kind of grant seeking. And then there are these small grants, and Doctor mentioned it as well, the travel grants. For us physicists, we have the International Union of Pure and Applied Physics. They usually give travel grants for conferences, but it's a very, very small grant. It is also very helpful. They will give you like $750, which you can actually use or top up from other grants. And then there's also the European Geophysical Union. It's also conference travel grant, which you can get up between 3,000 to 500 euros. Those small grants, they also help. And being in a group when searching for the grant, also very helpful. Usually, like she said, people do not really want to give you as an individual, just give you a grant as an individual. So forming a group or a research group really helps. Apart from the like that, it also helps you, because you will, like they say, many good heads is not many good heads are better than one. So you would be able to sit together, review the proposal, and you will see some of the shortcomings. We just finished one recently, and we're waiting. Hopefully, we'll be able to. It's a kind of global. It cuts across West Africa, the Horn of Africa, the Caribbean, and we all came together. It's the USAID proposal, which is looking into diversity, particularly when it comes to climate. Because we need to be interactive and to get the participants to ask their questions and get answers from Dr. Aisha. I will leave it at that. I'll pass the mic back to you, Dr. Tariq.
Thank you very much, Prof. Yes, I think what you've said, obviously, with your experience, it's very much in line. Some of which you've repeated, some of which are from your own experiences. So thank you very much. Again, just picking up on what you've said, again, which was the same with what Professor Aisha said. Don't just focus on the achievement. Obviously, when you compare that, you'll have the successes as well as the failures. So I think from what I pick up from your talks, two of you, is that we have to learn from those failures. We shouldn't try and just give up just because we failed. It doesn't matter how much or how many times that we failed, but rather because a lot of this funding, I understand you get the feedback, right? So it's rather looking at those feedback, looking at how can we improve, our writing skills, or the methodology, whatever it is, the budget, whatever section that needs improving. What we need to do really is to improve on that. And my understanding is you can also use quite a number of those projects that haven't gone through in one proposal, maybe make some changes to it and send it out for another funder. So I think without taking much time, we'll just go straight to the Q&A sessions. Probably today I'll start by asking the question, probably, because I'm very much interested in this as well. What are your thoughts with regards to, because my understanding is, especially for early career researchers, there are some particular funds which are specifically meant for early career researchers. So I think it's more or less a kind of an advice, even though you've talked briefly on that, for early career researchers, it's very important, looking at that eligibility criteria and identifying those calls that are specifically meant for early career researchers, because then it's very much less competitive in comparison to applying for other much broader calls.
Yes, you're right, Dr. Tariq. So, for instance, in the United States, so very specific in the at NSF National Science Foundation on the computing, so they have like different units that handles different proposals for science and engineering. So on the science, there is the computing unit, and under that we have a very specialized, actually not the computing, on the entire science, we have a very special proposal or solicitation called the CRII, which is geared towards early career researchers. Now you'll see that the eligibility for such kind of research grant is you have to, if you're a faculty, so in this case, you have to be a faculty, you have to have earned your terminal degree within the last 5 years. You must have not had any federal grant to your name as a PI. I mean, you may have another grant as a co-PI, which means you're not the lead PI, but you are, a second or third PI on that grant. So you have to satisfy all of that grants. Now, the grant is not as competitive. The review process is slightly lenient compared to other review processes. For instance, I got one of those grants. It's one of my second grant, even though the first one I was not. I had another one before as a federal grant, but I was not the lead PI. So I was eligible for the CRI. When I applied for that, and I got it. So later on, I was on that panel to review for subsequent years. And the criteria that was given to us was, we will not look at things like preliminary results. If you have, we look at things like good ideas, good, innovative, big ideas. That's what we should be looking for. So when we're reviewing the grants that year, we look at new faculty that just graduated from their PhDs, just got a tenure track or tenure position in a university. It has to be a university for a minimum for an institution. We look at if they have good big ideas. We don't look at whether they have published in that area. We don't look at whether they have they will have to have some track record. So for instance, their PhD has to be in that broader area, but we don't look at whether in that research question, whether they have preliminary results. That is off the table. And but we look at whether they could succeed, or all of that. We look at whether the logic model is good, and all of that. So it's kind of very lenient. And we also look at the university and say, can the university support you? Because this funding has a cap. It's not going to be more than $200,000. So can your university support you? If you're from a very big Ivy League, or you're from a very big research one university where there's a lot of research funding and the university can support you in this your big idea to bootstrap you, then you're not funded, even if your idea is good. But if you're from a kind of a middle and small university where they don't have a lot of research fund, but we're trying to encourage research funding, then you have a good logic model, then that goes into the review criteria. So I would definitely recommend look up your environment and see if there is that bootstrapping or SIT grant, or early career grant. There is, I think, again, I will be using the context of US because that's what I'm familiar with. Different agencies like Naval, United States Navy, they have what is called the Young Investigators grant, which is also given to young scientists. I think DoD has also another Young Investigators. I think DAPR has something like that. So if you check within your region, within your country, and see if you have that young scientist or young investigators grant. That is usually the easiest and the fastest way to bootstrap you, especially right after university. They'll look at a lot of criteria, whether you will be succeeded, but they will not penalize you for not having preliminary work or not being like, a known name in that field.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. I think we'll pick up maybe 3 questions. We'll start from Mujahid Nasser. Mujahid Nasser, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your questions? If you could be brief and straightforward, I think that would be really helpful, given the number of hands raised. Right, it seems like you're able to do that. What about Umar Babagana?
Hello, sir.
Hello, Umar. Oops. It seems like we're having issues with. Right.
Hello,
Can
sir.
you hear us, Umar? Yes, please.
Yeah.
Can you be straightforward and ask
Yeah,
your
sir.
question?
Okay, sir. Salaam alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Good evening to you all. I'm very much grateful and happy, excited to be part of the participant of this noble mentorship session. Jazakallah bi khairan to you all. May Allah grant you Jannati Firdausi. My question goes to Dr. Aisha Gombe. I know what are he planning to our graduate, most especially in Nigeria, that are willingly to pursue their academic career, either to pursue for MSc or PhD. Is she planning to support those younger ones, most especially from Nigeria, to pursue their MSc in her own grant or PhD? Are they planning something?
I think probably your question is, I don't know if Doctor want to make a comment on that, but I think would really appreciate questions that are related to the talk today about research grant writing rather than something else. So if you could also use a chat box to type in your question, that would be very helpful so that we can just read some of those questions. Okay, let's have a look. Okay. And also, if you could please use your name rather than using Infinix or something like that, it would be better. Let's have a look. We have Alamin Abdul Hamid. Can you unmute yourself and ask your question, please?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Amin wa
Yes,
alaikum
alaikum
salam.
salam.
Good evening to you all. My name is Muhammad Alamin Abdul Hamid from Gombe.
Please go ahead to your question.
I have a question regarding travel grant. I have admission and scholarship letter, my tuition fee, meal allowance, hostel. I got the admission.
Right. It seems like we're having problem I'll call on Hawa Mustafa Barbara. Can you please unmute yourself and ask your question, Hawa Mustafa Barbara?
Hello, salaam alaikum, everyone.
Alaikum salam.
Yeah, thank you very much for this really important information. My question is to both the speakers. Anybody can answer, please. As I have scouted through social media for like Nigerian or Arewa social media, it looks like a lot of information about opportunities in applying for grants are coming through late. And Dr. Aisha spoke about taking time to apply for grant. Don't rush. So as information is coming late, sometimes you will see the deadline is already even passed or is approaching. Can you please talk briefly about the importance of belonging to different forums or organizations or membership in avenues where you would be able to get this information in a timely manner? And also the second question is, if you could please express a little bit about, is it like what comes first, the chicken or the egg on grant? Meaning, do you sit and wait for it, or do you until the grant is available, or you write something and you go look for the opportunity? Alhamdulillah, I do have business here in the United States. We get grants from the government. And in my profession for early childhood education, we usually get a portal where we get grants from the government and private organizations. So is there such a thing internationally? Because sometimes now that myself, I'm starting to step into the international world, I would like to see some international opportunities for grants that I can actually, what do you call it, use for other purposes in life. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think there are some wonderful questions there. I'll let Dr. Aisha to respond to that.
Okay, so thank you, Baba Hawa, for that question. So starting with where to look for the grant. I will say if you wait on social media handle, that's an informal avenue for looking for a grant. I have put in some funding databases that usually they post this solicitation as early as possible. So it is important that you do your due diligence and go actively looking for those grants. Subscribe to one of those funding databases and you'll be receiving continuous email whenever a new grant is published. So then you will have more time between when it is published and when the due date, before the due date. Now, if you have to wait for that informal source, it means we only have to wait for word of mouth. For instance, Professor Rabia might hear that something, from another person or maybe from another database, and then, maybe she'll not remember. And then maybe like a week before the submission, she'll post it and say, oh, this is still, this is available if you wanna apply. That is informal. And I think oftentimes in our society, we take the informal route in a lot of our doings. And that's why sometimes we don't get to do things as soon as possible. If this is what you want to do, if research is your forte, if you are in academics and you want to apply for scholarship or you want to apply for travel, you have to actively seek for it. You have to subscribe to some database. Sometimes it comes with a fee and you have to go look for it. Now, can organizations, let's say, nonprofit like Arewa Youth Mentorship Forum and other organizations, make a subscription or get a donor that pay subscription fee to those databases, and then continuously maybe fund someone, pay someone a stipend that the person curates some of these opportunities and send them via email to all subscribers or post it on all of their social media handle. I think that's doable, but it's again, they are doing a lot of things right now, but it could be something that they want to take up as additional challenge to what they're currently doing. But I would say go actively look for the grant, go to their pages, go to databases, and sometimes you may even find something completely new, actually. That's something that you don't even think about in your mind, but because you've seen that being posted in that database, you might like chase to go to their website and review what they have. Now, I think that answers also the second question, which you said, should you write? and then sick, or should we wait until that becomes available? I think both ways is kind of correct. If you have, I like to think about people, especially for profit or even some small nonprofit, that often apply for things that they're very passionate about. I mean, researchers, we apply for things that we're passionate about, but research is part of our job, it's our everyday thing. That's what we do every day. And so it's always at the back of our mind. But if you run a nonprofit or you run a for-profit organization, if you have a good idea, I will say draft your idea, start planning, articulate, do your research, and then I will start to go look for, okay, who can fund this grant? There are organizations that don't post solicitations, they don't post RFPs. You have to go to them and then pitch your idea. When you pitch your idea, sometimes they'll find it very valuable. They'll find it very interesting. They'll say, okay, we're going to give you a certain amount, and you can even negotiate how much money they can give you. So you could actively do that when you have a very good idea that you're passionate about. So you could write, go look for the grant. Alternatively, sometimes, and this happens for us a lot in the academia, we don't necessarily write and keep. We see solicitation and then we come up with ideas and come up with a team. So either way can work, depending on, again, what's the topic, where you are, your organization, and whatnot. So I'll now give it to Professor Rabia if you want to add something.
Thank you very much. Prof, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I just want to add the fact that sometimes, I don't know, this is in Nigeria, most people don't check their mails every day, or check it even several times in the day. So I've had occasions when I will forward opportunities. When I look at them and I find that I'm not eligible, but then maybe probably some of them will have age limits. So I forward to younger colleagues, and several days after, and I ask her, did you see what I posted? Did you apply? And I'll be informed that they've not even checked their mails. So sometimes these are the reasons why there are delays for applications. Some don't check it until like 2 days to the deadline, then they see it in the mail and then start to run else. So sometimes also it's important that people check their mails frequently to see if we are trying from our side, and then people should also try from this side to use those opportunities. And I know that AYMP is doing that, putting up on all the social media handles. Opportunities are posted almost every day on the WhatsApp and then on the Telegram. So people need to be able to check all the time. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Prof. And I know quite a number of the funding organizations as well. So you can register and sign in for notifications of calls. And the good thing with some of these funders is you could have upcoming notification for upcoming calls as well. So calls that might be out in about 6 months, you get a notification that in, say, for example, next year, June, you're going to have a call and so on. So probably someone can start thinking about applying for those calls as well. And another thing is, I know some of the funders have a kind of a yearly kind of call. So every year they have a fixed date of when the call is going to be open, and then it's going to be closed at this date. So if you know a call is, one that's yearly advertised, and always you can, look forward to, if you're missing this year, then obviously you can look forward to the following year. Sorry, I'm not in the category of the two experts who have talked earlier, but I just felt maybe I should chip in. There's a number of charts. There's quite a number of requests for the PowerPoint slide. We'll try and get that, inshallah, and upload on the Telegram page. There are also comments on how to get the video recording. That would be on our YouTube channel, so you should be able to access that as well. I think we'll pick up a few more questions. Dr. Maji and the other organizing committee, if you can help me pick up any that you've seen in the chat box, that would be really helpful. Zakaria Muhammad Bello, can you unmute yourself and ask your question? Please remember, your question should be related to the talk. Are you there, Zakaria? It seems like not. What about Bint B. Musa?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, can you ask your question, please?
Yes, please. Thank you very much for this very insightful presentation. I am Dr. Binta from University of Abuja. Actually, I'm a senior lecturer with Biological Sciences Department. Actually, I have been teaching research methodology for as long as I know. I've been a lecturer and supervising projects. And I have these final year students who always ask me after their final year project, what else can they do with their knowledge they have learned from research they have learned in their final year. Actually, what I want is not really a question, but a request. If we can have the PowerPoint and some kind of potential list of potential sites to subscribe some of these grants that Dr. Aisha mentioned. I think there is a particular slide she projected, but it was she took it away too fast, so I couldn't pick up some few links from there. So if she can help us with the list of those potential sites to subscribe for these grants, and also the PowerPoint slides, so I can also help some of our students here in the university to project such things and show them that, look, after this, you can actually proceed and do such things in the field of research. I think, thank you very much. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, so do you want me to respond to that?
Yes, if you want to, that's fine. Yes, please.
Okay, so thank you, Dr. Binta from my alma mater. So in terms of the funding bodies, I have mentioned and I will caution people that I have not applied for anything outside the United States. So my knowledge of what I will say broadly international is very limited. I think Professor Rabia has more insight into what you can apply internationally, but I have more knowledge on like what's obtainable in the United States. And sometimes that has limitation. You have to be within the US to apply for those certain funding. However, I do have that one slide that kind of put in some of the funding databases, a link, and I'm more than happy to share my slides. I will try to do that as a PDF later. I will liaise with the organizers of this forum to share my slide. I think there are a couple of people that also talked about the slide in the chat box, so I could do that. But maybe later on, I don't know if Professor Rabia has some time and other people, maybe the organizers, we can look up some additional sites and maybe post it on the social media forum so people can see those databases and maybe subscribe to those databases. And again, I mentioned if this organization wants to kind of solicit some funding to get money to pay for that subscription, that would be great, so that the subscribers here can get information way ahead of time. With regards to students pursuing activities or research activities beyond the university project, I think that's a noble idea. It's good, but I will start by saying most of the time when we do undergraduate research, we only think about that undergraduate research as just, okay, I need to pass, like, I'll just do something blah 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 and just like submit and pass. It is kind of important that we put in, or we try to mentor students so they can put in some effort to do something very important, something very impactful, and something that when you are done with that research, you've learned something, but more than any other thing, you could publish that work. And that publishing and getting that work out is a ticket for you to graduate school. It's a ticket for you for master's and PhD. It's a ticket for you for some research job, for some international job. And also, it is a ticket for you to get funding to extend that research. Even as a student, I think I saw one question that someone asked, probably Fatima or someone, that asked, she had wanted this to be an avenue for us to talk about how students can get research funding for master's and PhD. that your undergraduate project that you did, if you can take that your project, try to work with your mentor to publish that work, I can guarantee you, Fatima, that's a ticket for you to get research funding for your graduate program. Because oftentimes when we apply for master's and PhD, the committee, and this is completely off the topic, Dr. Tariq, I apologize for that, but when we apply for graduate program, the committee review our proposal, our application, sorry, while they in the review process, they're not giving us money. So it's not kind of your typical grant, but when they review, they take applications that are really good applications based on your resume, your CV, and your statement of purpose or your personal statement to see who amongst these applicants have the potential to be good researchers, and thus often their application comes with funding. And this is very, very true for the United States. Maybe not necessarily true for other countries, UK and other countries, maybe Asia, but it is 100% true for the United States. Your ticket to getting graduate funding, and maybe we can have another session on how to make application and whatnot, but your ticket to graduate funding is to submit an application to articulate that in your application you have some research ideas, you have done some research, and if you can show as an undergraduate student you've done research, that is even more appreciated than anyone else, because it shows that you're committed. You're a committed researcher from a young age, from a undergraduate program. You're already doing this kind of research. So the committee will appreciate your work, and you often you see if you're given admission, your application will be ranked high, and there's likelihood that you can have a research assistantship or a teaching assistantship. So that's about that. So I would definitely encourage that we, maybe you, Dr. Binta, advise your students to pursue much more than just the undergraduate project, but if they can extend that to a paper, they can use that for the graduate admission, and that will help them secure funding.
Thank you very much. That's a question about budget. What are your advice with regards to budget? Because for a lot of people that are not really much experience in, say, for example, this is your first grant application, you might request an amount which is much more than the usual amount for that particular project. And then because the budget is too high, then your project might, or your proposal might be rejected. You might, at the same time, request for a much lower amount, and then it won't be enough for your particular project. So what advice do you have in that regards with regards to project? If you don't have a particular body or a particular office that's supposed to you with the budget, how do you go about it?
This is a very, very good question and very interesting one. And I had this question when I talked about this topic to the faculty at Gombe State University. And I say, do not go over budget. First rule of thumb, never go over budget, and do not go way under budget. So it is important to understand what the funding body wants. The funding body, usually they have their own big budget, and within their big budget, they know in their mind how many projects we want to fund. So they have some kind of estimate to say, okay, every project is, let's say, $500,000. You want to come as close to $500,000 as possible, but you never want to cross 500,000. Now, is it possible to write something that you're only asking for 300,000? Yes, you could do that. However, it's not, I will not advise you to do that. I will advise you to come close to $400,000 and, make sure that your idea is big enough and covers all of that. Now, in terms of the budget, I do not start my budget until I think about my scope. So my scope determines my budget. What is my work? What is my objective? How big is my scope? What are the different moving pieces? So for instance, I'll give you an example with my clinic grant. The clinic grant has 9 people on board, which means we have 9 PIs who each one may have at least one summer salary, right? And then because we're training students, what are we going to do to those students? Are we giving them stipend? No, in this grant, we're not giving them stipend. However, we're paying for their certification. So I'll write it somewhere that there's going to be certification fee. Now, these students will be engaging with small businesses outside. They're going to need devices to do that. So I'm going to put in money for their for their devices, laptops, and I will go look for like how much it's going to cost to buy like one very good laptop that we could install software like for penetration testing and whatnot. Then I will look at, okay, do I need graduate students? Do I need support of undergraduate students? What is going to be their role? Almost, at least in the US, every proposal is accompanied by what we call budget justification. You have to justify every line in your budget. If I'm requesting $2,000 for 10 laptops, each at $2,000, that means I need $20,000 for the laptop. I need to have a justification for what these laptops are going to be used for, and just an idea where I will be purchasing that laptop from. So that will justify that $2,000. So think about your scope. Think about what you want to do, and then make sure your budget aligns with your scope. If in your scope you're mentioning completely something different, and then your budget shows that you're doing something different, that's a recipe for disaster. You don't want to do that. So you want to make sure that as you do your budget, you're doing it with your idea together, and you do it and modify things. Now, if you don't have any dedicated person to do a budget, it's very painful. I can tell you that. Budget is very painful. For universities, often we have somebody dedicated to doing budget. So all I have to do is to list, I want this, and that, just give them bullet points, and then they will create the budget, because funding agencies do what we call an overhead. So in the US, for instance, the overhead is how universities make money. And so for most of our expenses, they take a certain percentage as overhead. So calculating all of that with fringe benefits and whatnot, and a percentage increase every year and whatnot, it's not something that I would like to do while I'm crafting my proposal. So somebody does that for me. If you don't have, you need to start early. It's still doable. It's an Excel file for the most part. It's still rudimentary, and you can still come up with your budget. Now, some organizations have template. I think Professor Rabia kind of hinted that, especially for scholarships. They have a template. Some will have complete budget template. So if they do have a budget template, stick to that budget template, download it. As you creating your ideas, put in the points. Okay, so I will be traveling from Gombe to Jos, once a month, right? This is the cost of PMS. This is, the cost of the rental car. This is the cost of blah, blah. Then put it down in your budget and justify it in the budget justification, as well as in your narrative, to show why traveling from Gombe to Jos is important for your proposal. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you very much. We'll pick on the last question. Makiu Abdullahi, that would be the last. When you mute yourself and ask your question, if you could go straight to the point, that would be very useful, very helpful.
Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon, all. Thank you very much for the presentation, Dr. Aisha. My question is about the eligibility, especially with regard to discipline or field of study. Because in some cases, people may be missing some opportunities because of this issue of nomenclature of their field of study, especially in their certificate. Because some field of study may be divided into other subsections or may be linked to other sections. Or the field of study may have an entirely different interpretation from country to country. And some countries are more strict about the nomenclature than others. Let me give an example with my field of study, material science. Sometimes you have material science and engineering. Sometimes you have nanoscience, nanotechnology, solid state physics, solid state chemistry, something like that. And an opportunity may mention one or two of these, and maybe an applicant may think that it is not his own field of study, ending up missing everything, while in actual sense he is eligible for the application. What doctor can highlight about this one, I think it will help so that people may not be missing because of this interpretation of the nomenclature. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Doctor, do you want to respond to that?
Yes, I think you're very correct on that one. But I think the very best way you could do to kind of solve that problem is to show that you're an expert in that field, irrespective of what that field is called. And how do you show that? You have to show that from your track record. You have to show that from your publication. The venues that you publish, the journals, the conferences that you attend will show that you're an expert in that field. And in your narrative, you want to use the language they expect, the funders' language, as closely as possible. So if, let's say, the funders use nanotechnology instead of material science, but you know that your work is so close to nanotechnology, and there's kind of very small difference. So for instance, I could be from computer science and the funding agency says IT, right? Information technology. I mean, we're kind of so closely related, but still we have some distinction. But if I want to apply for something like IT, I will present my narrative that I'm solving an IT problem, because kind of that's the language they're expecting. And in my resume, my journals and conferences and my papers will show that I've published in this computing and information technology kind of conferences. And I think the reviewers should not necessarily take those small semantic differences into consideration, as long as you've shown clearly that you're an expert in that field. And, that is, again, it's shown in your narrative as well as in your resume.
Thank you very much. I think just one last for Prof. There's a question about local funding, Prof. I don't know if you want to make a comment about local funding, because Dr. Aisha did mention that most of our expertise is in the United States. Are there any local funding bodies, or how can people have information with regards to local funding bodies in the country?
Prof, yeah, well, I think the one that is in academia now that we are very familiar with is the TED Fund. The TED Fund in Nigeria for academics, it's given funding for research, but mainly applied research. A lot of proposals have been rejected based on the fact that they say it's basic research. I think I had one of mine also rejected, and the reason was that it's more basic research. They are more interested in applied research. Whatever you're going to do, you will have to prove that it is it's applicable and useful, either probably leading to something, because they said TED Fund is looking at a situation where they will finally be funding patents. So if your research is not applied research in such a way that you can it can lead to a product, or you are having a patent, then you will not get funded. Apart from that, I'm not so sure about any other local funding, except that you have international funding, but which are specific to Africa or to developing countries. So with the ones that Nigerians can actually apply for, they are specific. Just like Dr. Aisha said that most of the funding grants would require you to be a U.S. citizen. There are grants here which are also specific to developing countries or to Africa, and then you have the West Africa. I don't have the names of them off the top of my head at this moment, but I know that there are those ones, and those are the ones that Nigerians can actually go for. If I can remember, there's Alexander von Humboldt Foundation. They are specific to developing countries, and there's one that is specific to Africa, and I'm in the process of applying for that to go for a sabbatical. But it requires that you already know somebody in an institute in Germany who will be willing to host you. I just utilized the opportunity of my last travel to Munich to get a host at the institute there. So something there are those ones which particularly researchers who are academics can apply for. And I think we will be sharing them. I will share whichever ones I have with in the AYMP, and then it can be shared. I share some on the Facebook too, and on LinkedIn, especially on LinkedIn.
Okay. All right. I think this brings us to the end of the session. It's been 2 hours. Thank you very much, especially to Professor Aisha, who spent her morning with us, giving us this, wonderful talk. We've really benefited. We've learned a lot. And we'll try and get this PowerPoint and share it with our participants, because it's highly engaging. Quite a lot of people are very much interested in this. So thank you very much once again. We really appreciate your time. And hopefully sometime in the future, we'll call you maybe to give a talk on how do we manage the fund. If we're successful, we get the funds. So when we are successful and get the funds, we also have to manage it. How do you manage it? You already have the expertise yourself and Prof. You can come back and talk to us on how we can manage those funds. So thank you very much. Thank you very much to Professor, our mentor. We really appreciate it. I think that would be it for the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I shall hope to keep in touch with you.
And as always,
thank you very much,
our participants.
Okay,
Our participants, you've been amazing. I do apologize due to the time limit. I'm not able to give you the opportunity to ask your questions. However, there have been some wonderful comments and questions from the chat box. Thank you very much. And of course, the organizing committee who have been working behind the scenes. Thank you very much, and do have a good afternoon.
And thank you, Tariq, for the excellent moderation.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
You can also be part of it as a mentor or student. Join the Arewa Youth Mentorship Program on Telegram, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. AYMP, together we can be great.